where the rubber always meets the road, I think. Actually, I'm not even sure what that means.
Heartland Newsfeed Radio Network, live at heartlandnewsfeed.com.
This is RFD Today, a daily look at the key topics impacting rural Illinois. If you live in Illinois, we examine the issues impacting you, your income, and your community. Here's your host for today's program, Delosh Yonke.
Hey, good Monday to you, Illinois. Thanks for joining us for this adventure in broadcasting on the 4th of February. There are some people that suggest the day after the Super Bowl should be a holiday, but I'd still be in here doing the show, so it doesn't matter either way, although sure wish they'd have it on Saturday night instead. And I didn't care much about the game or for the game. I wasn't rooting for either team, was rooting against both, which is kind of hard to do. But, boy, the ag community, myself included, has certainly been riled up by some of the commercials that took place during the game, many of which from Anheuser-Busch, and more specifically Bud Light. All of the beer companies are going to put the ingredient labels on their products soon, and Bud Light got it ahead of everyone and made it part of their advertising campaign, which seemed fine enough until yesterday. 3 different ads that I saw, there may have been more, but at least 3 that specifically said they don't use corn syrup, spending millions and millions of dollars to bash corn syrup. Anheuser-Busch says, quote, it fully supports corn growers and will continue to invest in the corn industry. And then the response from Miller Coors, which says, we're proud of their quality. It says, we're also proud that none of our products include any high fructose corn syrup, while a number of Anheuser-Busch products do. So shaming from both sides of that particular aisle. And then there was one for an organic product and all kinds of stuff. But a lot of effort into apparently trying to determine which carcinogen is the healthiest. Oh, well. But better things to talk about instead. Let's talk about better things like Illinois economy, for example. On the program today, we'll hear from Jack Tichenor, Southern Illinois University, talking policy. We'll also are looking at 2019, the year ahead from a legislative standpoint. Bill Urkel, senior analyst at AgriVisor, will be along as well. And we'll have a feature from Illinois Soybean Association, and we'll talk about irrigation, which certainly benefits some farmers in different parts of the state. So when we come back, we'll have plenty to come here on a Monday, RFD Today. Stay with us.
I have a lifetime of experience as a financial planner.
A lawyer.
A homemaker.
An educator.
A mechanic.
A nurse.
You know what I am now? I'm a Senior Corps RSVP volunteer. I build homes and young minds. I build parks and playgrounds.
And support our nation's veterans.
I build gardens and help families with their finances.
I build healthy futures.
And organize disaster relief. I build teams and friendships.
And families.
I build lives and communities.
And myself. I'm a builder, and I lead by experience. How about you?
Join Senior Corps RSVP.
Lead by experience.
At seniorcorps.gov.
Yes, I listen to a lot of talk radio, but I wouldn't call myself a political junkie. I guess that's why I like being a member of the Illinois Farm Bureau. No matter what my comfort level is, Farm Bureau has something for me and my farm. As an Illinois Farm Bureau member, I can pick and choose what's best for me, from reading election news and Farm Week to actually going to Washington. That's enough to make me a policy nut after all.
Call your county Farm Bureau and customize your membership today.
Farm Week and FarmWeekNow.com journalist Daniel Grant connects rural routes for you. With more than 2 decades of reporting under his belt, Dan is the go-to source for farmers when it comes to commodities. Here's a bit about his rural roots.
I grew up on a grain and livestock farm near Roseville in Warren County. What I love about my job is working with people, traveling across Illinois, and visiting farms along the way.
be it routes or routes. RFD Radio, FarmWeekNow.com, and Farm Week keep you connected.
And now, another episode of Ill Soy Advisor Profitability Radio, brought to you by the Illinois Soybean Checkoff. IllSoyAdvisor.com is your best source for soybean management information. Today we're talking about water management, particularly as it relates to irrigation. Illinois gets plenty of rainfall and has water for soybean production, but depending on soil and weather conditions, irrigation can meet at least some of the needs for crop moisture. More than 500,000 acres of cropland are irrigated in Illinois, so how do you manage all that water wisely? We're talking to Tim Skates down in southern Illinois about water and energy-saving technologies on the farm. We talk about a family farm. How big is the family, and who all's involved in the farming operation?
Well, there's probably about 12 or 13 of us, and we live in basically Gallatin and White counties. We farm together, and then we also have an irrigation business, and we do a little bit of trucking.
Wow. So how does the irrigation fit into the whole system?
Well, we usually try to irrigate around 30 to 40% of our soybean acres each year. It's a little harder to predict the response of the soybeans to the moisture that we get or we give it, but they need it at several different growth phases, nearing when they emerge and close to when they flower, and then again when they're filling the pod. It's when, we'd like to have it, and, we'd rather rely on the rainfall, but we don't always get it, so that's when we try to supplement with the irrigation systems that we have.
If you're maybe 3 days away, depending on what forecasts say, at some point you have to just say, okay, let's go for it, but you don't want to get too soaked on the back end either. So I'm sure you have to manage that, and each year is different that way.
Correct. What we might do in that case, if they're calling for rain, but we're actually really needing it, we may go ahead and put on a little bit and maybe just not quite as much and see if we get the rainfall naturally. And then if we don't, we'll go ahead and then supplement it, have it run around again, or maybe put, maybe a half inch on or so.
What are some ways that the technology has improved that you're able to use on the farm?
When we first began irrigating back in probably 1977, most of the pumps that we used were 100 horsepower, 150 horsepower, and they were pumping higher pressure throughout the system. And over the years, they, developed different nozzles, and it's ended up helping us lower the pressure, which also then can lower the horsepower on the pumps, which, doesn't use as much energy, or if they're on, a power unit, doesn't use as much fuel to run the whole system.
Gotcha. How do you try to soak it? Especially, we're trying to also keep nutrients on the field and keep it for the crop and all those things.
What we try to do is put enough water on that, it's beneficial for the crop, but not too much to where we have some runoffs, and in the plant, it doesn't utilize it. It's costing us extra money to put more water on than we need. So a lot of times we do have some soil moisture probes that we use to kind of guide us, find out kind of where the moisture is, if it's just in the upper crust of the soil or if it's down around the root system, so we can kind of gauge about how much water we are getting down to the roots, and that way we can either water more or less, kind of depending on kind of what that guide tells us.
It takes energy to be able to do that. So is that the same way? Like, you don't want to spend so much on energy putting the water on that it, doesn't give you enough yield benefit to pay for the energy costs.
Right. We don't want to use too much water, and we don't want to use too much electricity. Basically, what our electric co-op we have an agreement with right now, that if they can interrupt our electrical supply to our irrigation, during peak times during the summer when the temperature rises to a certain degree, they can automatically shut just our systems off and then restart them at a later time. They may be off for 6 to 8 hours.
Where's the water coming from? Is it coming off of a river, or where does it come from?
Most of our water is coming from ground wells. and most of them in our area are around 80 to 90 feet. We have a few that are pulling out of ponds or maybe some other tributaries, but most of the irrigations in our area are all pulling out of freshwater wells.
Well, that's a lot of balancing then. Proper amount of water and not losing any nutrients and not spending too much on it either. So, yeah, it certainly has to be something that fits. I'm sure you've had to balance that over time, and as the technology improves, hopefully that helps as well.
Yes, it does. And what we try to do is pick different varieties that work, best under irrigation. And then we also have varieties that are more drought resistant that we try to use where we know we're not going to be able to irrigate that year. You have to manage it a little bit better because you don't want the soil to get too wet to where, there's fungus or mold or something like that growing. You don't want to just saturate it so much that you end up having problems with too much water.
Well, thanks so much for doing this. Hopefully you have pretty good moisture after these winter events to hold you in the ground for a while.
We'd a whole lot rather use, Mother Nature's rain than our own, but we use the irrigation systems as kind of an insurance policy against, a drought or something.
Tim Skates farms in White and Gallatin counties as part of a multiple family operation. Tim's a former ISA board member representing District 16 in southern Illinois. Remember, soybean management pays. Visit ilsoyadvisor.com for more recommendations. That's ilsoyadvisor.com. Funded by your Soybean Checkoff.
With this week's edition of Farm Week, the early word, here's Rita Frazier.
Illinois farmers value stewardship. That's evident in Illinois Farm Bureau's investment of nearly $1 million during the last 3 years on efforts to reduce nutrient losses from farmland. Learn more in the latest edition of Farm Week. Young farmers may find it difficult to buy farmland. However, with the right strategy and resources, they can successfully purchase acreage. Discover some farmland buying tips in Farm Week. And look for Farm Week's Spring Planting Special Edition on February 18th. And get an early outlook on this year's planting season.
No other Farm Weekly in Illinois has as many people on the ground in Illinois covering Illinois agriculture for you with the depth on key issues to help keep you profitable. And don't forget, you can get daily or even more frequent updates online anytime at farmweeknow.com.
RFD Radio Network's DeLoss Yankee connects rural routes for you. DeLoss delivers essential farm and food-related news to our listeners. His witty voice has been heard on the air for more than 2 decades. Here's a bit about his rural roots.
Growing up on a farm prepared me for my career. I try to know a little about a lot of things and let the people I interview be the experts. I've always wanted to be on the radio. I'm just happy to do what I enjoy.
Be it routes or roots, RFD Radio, FarmWeekNow.com, and Farm Week keep you connected.
If you're in the mood for some sprucing up, you're in luck. From big to small or farm to front yard, your Illinois Farm Bureau member discount from John Deere is ready and waiting to help. It's easy to think green when it's the Rewards loyalty program with savings on equipment, special parts, and home and workshop products. Whether your tasks involve mowing, planting, or cleaning, you'll be set for whatever your work requires. All you need to do is sign up, have your membership number handy, and go to johndeere.com/Farm Bureau.
Okay, men, this is your time. Maybe you didn't choose this, but you're here now. You're going to go out there and be an all-star caregiver. It's up to you. So what are you going to do? You're going to go grocery shopping, cook, clean, be there emotionally and physically. You got to dig deeper. Drive them to physical therapy, doctor's appointments. Don't you forget about the pharmacy. No, you won't. Because that's what caregivers do. Don't give up. Don't ever give up. This is your time to show the world, your family, and yourself that you're tougher than tough. Now go out there and be the best caregiver this world has ever seen. Caregiving is tougher than tough. Find the care guides you need at aarp.org/caregiving. A public service announcement brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Welcome back to RFD today on a Monday. I'm DeLoss Yankee. Joining us, we'll go down to Carbondale now, Jack Titchener at Southern Illinois, and he is the host of Illinois Lawmakers. Jack, how are you?
Well, I'm doing fine. Good to be here with you and your listeners today.
I am curious just how cold it got down your way last week. I assume you missed at least some of the intensity of that polar vortex.
Well, I did, but it was really funny. I was actually at the Capitol on Monday and felt it drop precipitously between the time we went into the building and by the time we came out. The winds were gusting up to like 40 miles an hour, and I wished I'd more and more layers. But we got down to around zero in the Carbondale area, but the wind chill factors were well below zero, so it was pretty harsh, but certainly orders of magnitude less than, say, central Illinois and the Chicago metropolitan area. It was dangerously, deadly cold up there.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so here we are in the first full week of February, and a couple of weeks for folks to get settled in Springfield. A couple of thoughts. When we talk Springfield, budget usually is, if not first on the list, it is near the top. So what are a couple of thoughts this go around?
Well, we're getting ready for Governor Pritzker's first State of the State and budget message speech. That's going to be live at 12 noon on Wednesday, February 20th. You can see that on Illinois Public Television stations and hear it on Illinois Public Radio stations, a simulcast of the Illinois Lawmakers program. The governor has decided to combine the State of the State and the budget message. That has been done from time to time in the past. I think that the key goal there is to get as much lined up, all the I's dotted and the T's crossed, as much as the administration can before they roll out a budget plan. Obviously, the state has had some very severe financial problems over the past few years, and they wanted to give their best effort in terms of pulling all that together. Sometimes the sitting governors get a little criticized for doing the State of the State, and, well, the budget's the big thing out there, so, we would like more specificity. Well, the specificity comes in the budget message, which is required by law to be done on the third Wednesday of February. So I think in this case, he's going to roll the whole thing out as one big package. And it'll be interesting because one of the things I was just going through with some detail is a report out late last week by the Comptroller's office, Susana Mendoza's office. They had a report on the one-year anniversary of the Debt Transparency Act, which basically now requires monthly reports from the state agencies on how much debt the state is holding. And some of the information is kind of sobering. As you recall, we've talked about this a number of times on the program. Lawmakers last year approved a $38.5 billion budget for the fiscal year that runs July 1 through June 30th of this year. But despite the facts that both sides said it was balanced, it was a bipartisan bill, there's a new report from the Comptroller that says this current budget is off by anywhere between $1.5 to $2 billion, and this is only going to add to the state's backlog of bills, which stands at around $7.5 billion. Part of the reason for that, DeLoss, is the fiscal year 2019 budget, which we're currently in, counts on some revenue sources that haven't paid off yet. One of the things they've tried to do for a couple of years now, actually going all the way back to the Blagojevich years, and Governor Rauner tried it too, was trying to sell the James R. Thompson Center in downtown Chicago. That's about $350 million. The state was hoping to get on that, $300 to $350 million. Well, that hasn't been sold yet, and it's not likely that it's going to be done by the end of the fiscal year. We're also down about $285 million in federal revenue sources, and there's another $550 million in what they call interfund borrowing by the end of the fiscal year that probably isn't going to pay off or isn't going to be accomplished because of a fund shortage. The new pension buyout plan that was supposed to be rolled out for the state university's retirement system and at least one of the other retirement systems was supposed to generate something like $445 million this year, but the rollout's gone slower than that, and although it will start to catch up and start chipping away at some of that back pension debt, it's not going to do it as quickly as they'd hoped. So we're looking at, again, a pretty good-size hole in the current budget.
That seems like twice as big as last year when we were talking at this time. Does that seem about right?
Well, it's...
Or those were two different budget estimators that were pretty close to each other.
There's always kind of a moving target, but they build into the budget planning ideas like selling the Thompson Center and doing different things like that, and they don't always pay off. So you can end up with a shortfall despite your best intentions. I think the thing that kind of points out here is this Debt Transparency Act is actually giving both the Comptroller, the Governor's Office of the Management and Budget, and the legislature's forecasting arm, the Committee on Governmental Forecasting and all, I think it's giving them a better idea of just how the state's budget situation is actually faring on a monthly basis. The problem we had before this thing was actually passed to us was that you had a snapshot of what was owed, say, at the end of June of one fiscal year, but you wouldn't get that estimate until October.
Yeah.
So you really had no idea of what was actually in play there.
All right, hold on just a second. We have a break coming up here. Jack Tichenor, host of Illinois Lawmakers, and more to come with Jack on a Monday RFD Today.
More farm news and information ahead. Stay tuned for more RFD Today here on the Illinois Farm Bureau Radio Network.
The USDA, National Agricultural Statistics Service, or NASS, recently mailed a survey to Illinois farmers that gives your farm a voice. You can help provide important data that will shape the future of nutrient loss and conservation in Illinois. Look for your NASS survey in the mail in early February. If you receive the survey, take a few minutes and complete it and return it in the prepaid envelope. Together, we are making a difference in Illinois water quality. Visit ilfb.org/NLRS for more information.
Here in Illinois, it's everywhere, and it's used in so many things. We're talking about Illinois homegrown corn. It's fuel for your vehicle on the way to the game. It's a delicious corn-fed bacon cheeseburger that's the talk of the tailgate. Corn is even used to make things like plastic water bottles and lipstick. We're proud that Illinois runs on homegrown corn, and you should be too. Learn more about how corn shows up in unexpected places at watchusgrow.org/corn. A message from Illinois corn farmers and their checkoff.
Farm, family, food. Those three words best describe Illinois Farm Bureau. Farm. For 100 years, Farm Bureau in Illinois has represented and served the men and women who make Illinois one of the top food-producing states. Family. At the heart of rural Illinois are traditional farm families who work together through Illinois Farm Bureau. And food. Farm Bureau families are proud to grow the healthy food they provide their families and yours. Farm, family, food. The heart of Farm Bureau in Illinois.
All ag.
All Illinois.
All now.
There are a lot of smartphone apps out there, but do they have what's important to us here in Illinois? The Farm Week Now app does, and it's always at your fingertips. All ag, all Illinois, and 24/7 where and when you need it for free. Go to your app or Play Store on your smartphone, hit search, type in Farm Week Now, that's one word, and download it today. Brought to you by Illinois Farm Bureau, where we're all about farm, family, and food.
Leading your family farm is what you know best. Paying bills, making marketing decisions, and leaving the farm better for the next generation. Farm Bureau needs you to lead our organization and champion our legislative priorities. Farmers will be working with a new governor, Congress, and General Assembly. Illinois agriculture only remains strong when farmers realize this power and continue taking charge of change. Join us for the 2019 Governmental Affairs Leadership Conference. This one-day event takes place February 19th at the President Abraham Lincoln Hotel in Springfield. Hear from keynote speaker Jesse Waters, co-host of The Five and host of Fox News program Waters World. Don't miss this opportunity to cover policy information, state and national legislative updates, and end with a legislative reception with members of the Illinois General Assembly. Register today and start taking charge of change. Contact your county farm bureau or visit ilfb.org/GALC for more information.
All right, welcome back to RFD today on a Monday. I'm DeLoss Yankee with Jack Titchener, host of Illinois Lawmakers, talking about what's, first couple of weeks of activity in Springfield in 2019, which includes some executive orders. From a quantity perspective or an impact perspective, or, what those orders have been. Any surprises, anything like that?
I don't think any surprises, really, and I'm thumbing through my notes here. I think a lot of these are largely goodwill issues toward those communities and constituencies that helped support Governor Pritzker in the election campaign. And he rolled out a bunch of them in the first few days of his governorship. Let's see, there was, first of all, one that, organized labor, a big backer of his campaign. He signed an executive order to restore step increases for state employees. Those had been frozen by the Rauner administration. Courts had ordered them to be restored, and so those raises will be coming. Also, he signed an order banning state agencies from asking prospective employees about their salary histories. This has been an issue that has been discussed a lot in recent years. The sense of it is that when you go into negotiating for a salary, it puts women in particular at a disadvantage because they leave and reenter the workforce more often than men, so it could put them in a disadvantage in salary negotiations. There's another one. He signed an order adding Illinois to the list of states that are committed to the protocols of the Paris Climate Agreement to reduce greenhouse gases, committing Illinois to receiving 25% of its energy from renewable resources by 2025. I think that takes us to about 18 states that have done that after the Trump administration pulled out of that agreement. There was another executive order, signed last week, and that was designed to strengthen the state's commitment to ending the HIV epidemic by investing more into programs and services like testing and other initiatives, also improving the monitoring of HIV cases through Medicaid providers. Let's see, there's another one here that steps up oversight about how the state funds welcoming centers for new immigrants and informing them of their rights and current state programs that assist them. The Rauner administration had been criticized for not spending all the money that was appropriated for those centers. And let's see, probably the other one that made the biggest news was an order requiring the state to fully enforce House Bill 40, which was the one that requires the Department of Central Management Services this is actually the one that provides public funding for abortions in the state of Illinois. Well, this requires CMS to review all state employee health group insurance plans. It also has to identify barriers to women exercising their right to choose and so on. So
that's a lot, though, isn't it?
Well, that is a lot. I think the impression that they generally want to give is that they hit the ground running. And although we're still waiting on where things stand with raising the minimum wage, although there may be some news as early this week to report on that, and recreational marijuana, the progressive income tax, I think the general impression is they want to show the people of Illinois that they hit the ground running and they're taking on a number of the challenges that face the state.
Whenever I hear things about minimum wage, the number comes to mind is 15.
Yes.
That's the number that would be most likely to come through Springfield?
Right. That had actually passed a while back, raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour, phased in over a series of years. Governor Rauner, you'll recall, vetoed that. Raising the minimum wage to $15 was a big plank in Governor Pritzker's campaign platform. So he wants to see that done, and he wants to see it done soon. We might see action on that as early as this week in the Senate. Partly that's because the Senate calendar comes into play, and the fact that the governor would like to see this on his desk before that budget and State of the State message on the 20th. The Senate is in all this week, but they're taking a week off the following week. Then they come back for the budget message. So the House is in that week, the week after this, so that if anything's going to happen in the Senate, it still needs to get over to the House. There are still some questions on how this is all going to shake out. One of the big ones is how long this phase-in period will last. Could it take till 2025, or would it be on a faster track than that? Business groups, of course, oppose the idea. They'd like a longer rollout period if it is adopted. One that's been mentioned in a hearing last week was a 7-year rollout with $1 a year increase for the first 6 years and then 75 cents in that final year. There's also a question, and this is interesting, if you look at the geography of Illinois and where the population centers are, there's a question about whether or not there would be a sort of geographic differential, so that, say, downstate or central Illinois or more rural parts of the state, whether that wage might be lower because the cost of living would be lower in those areas. New York State has done this. They have a geographic model. New York City's minimum wage is $15 an hour. Long Island's, I believe, is $12, and the rest of the state is $11.10. So that's an idea. I've read that the governor is not happy with that idea in terms of a geographical breakout, because he campaigned on the idea of a $15 minimum wage overall. Business groups, of course, are concerned about the wage increase for obvious reasons. They say that it could cost upwards of 10,000 jobs for lower wage workers. The backers of the bill, though, say they haven't seen any hard data showing that there's been a real reduction in jobs since the last time it was raised in the state.
Hang on, we have a break coming up here, and we'll continue that discussion in just a couple of minutes here. Jack Tichenor on RFD today.
When it comes to social media, Sabrina Berkowitz connects rural routes for you. Sabrina covers a broad range of ag topics, so Farm Bureau members are the first to know about key issues. Here's a bit about her rural roots.
I grew up with a grain and livestock farm in my extended family, and today I really enjoy helping people learn how to use social media to advocate for agriculture.
Be it routes or roots, RFD Radio, FarmWeekNow.com, and Farm Week keep you connected.
We know you want the best for your family. We do too. That's why Illinois farmers continually look for new ways to help. We're working with Mother Nature to preserve water, protect land, and provide food. From our fields to your table, we want what's best for all of us and for future generations to come. Learn more about conservation efforts at ilfarmersconserve.com. Preserving our water, protecting our land, providing our food.
This message brought to you by Illinois Farm Bureau.
Let's check the markets on the RFD Radio Network. I'm DeLoss Yankee. Just a little bit higher for corn, while soybeans are up 4 cents a bushel. March corn up a fraction, 378.5. May up a fraction, 387.25. And December unchanged, $4.0225. March soybeans up 4.5, 922.25. May up 4.5, 936. November up 3 3/4, 961. Those are just a little bit off of the early session highs so far. March wheat up 2 1/4, 526.5. July down 1/2 cent, 531.5. April hogs are up $1.07, 61.20. April cattle up 90, 127.17. And feeders for March are up 2 1/4, 144.77. Crude oil down $1.44. The Los Yankee RFD Radio Network. All right, welcome back to RFD today on a Monday. I'm DeLoss Yankee. We'll hear from Dale Dirkholz at AgriVisor in a little bit. Right now we're conversing with Jack Tichenor down in southern Illinois, host of Illinois Lawmakers, and discussing minimum wage. One thing about, with minimum wage, let's say $15 an hour for 40 hours is $600 a week. At 50 weeks is $30,000. I don't know if there would be any state jobs or not that would pay less than that, so I assume there would be, but surely there are some salaried jobs somewhere, maybe even at the university level, that would be right around that range that might have to be modified as well, I would think.
Well, that is a concern for universities. It's also a concern for extended care facilities, nursing homes, places like that, where the wage is a lot of times lower than that. In terms of universities, you've got to take into account civil service workers. Some of those positions don't pay all that well. So the universities and, as I said, nursing homes and other employers are going to have to take a really good look at that to see how that's going to affect their bottom line. There is one proposal that has the interest of business groups. It would be having businesses with 50 employees or less would get to claim a tax credit on employee withholding. Business groups would like to see that head count even higher. So although they're heading into this week, possibly moving on this thing, there's still a lot of questions, I think, that remain. It'll be interesting to see how this shakes out. But I think there's a fair amount of movement on the governor's part. He wants to get this thing done, wants to get it done early in his administration. There are other big things that he wants to get done later on, like recreational marijuana and so forth. But he wants to put one in the win column early, and this appears to be the one from all accounts that I'm seeing. This looks like the one he wants to take out first.
Could there be a connection between an overall minimum wage and what could be paid from a union, organized labor standpoint?
Well, it's a good question. I'm not as familiar with the union standpoint on these things, but I'm sure that for example, for certain unions like those that provide health care for people living in nursing homes, like the Service Employees Union, for example, this would be something that they would be very interested in seeing as well. So I'm sure there's some connections there as well. No question about that.
All right. Just a few minutes left here. A couple of other thoughts down in Springfield now that we're into early February.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think there's already considerable discussion now around the state on legalizing recreational marijuana. You know, despite the cold snap on Monday that hit Springfield, there was a town hall meeting that Senator Andy Menard from Bunker Hill held there in the Capitol with the House and Senate sponsors. The Senate sponsor, Heather Staines from Chicago, and State Representative Kelly Cassidy, also from Chicago. They're the two main sponsors on this. They had pretty much a packed house there, despite the frigid temperatures. I think this is one you can probably take to the bank. It's going to happen. The governor is for it. Speaker Madigan has signaled that he's on board with legalizing recreational marijuana. It only has to pass the House with 60 votes. The Senate only needs 30. And there's also some bipartisan support from this. There are some Republicans are getting on board. And the fact that there's no threat of a gubernatorial veto, so you don't have to go to 71 and 36, I think this is heading there. There's some key components of the bill that were talked about the other night. Illinois residents 21 and over would be able to purchase and possess up to 30 grams of cannabis. Non-residents of Illinois could buy half that amount. And the idea behind that is to keep people from buying huge amounts of marijuana in Illinois and then going back home and selling it where it's still illegal. Municipalities could opt out of this program. However, they could not prevent residents from privately possessing weed. Employers under this act would still be able to insist on a drug-free workplace. Landlords could also say, hey, you can't have that here. This one would also ban public use of marijuana, and understandably, you can't drive under the influence. It would allow adults 21 and over to grow up to 5 plants per household, and let's see. Looks like this would be sold through dispensaries, kind of like they do with medical marijuana, but there wouldn't be the cannabis bars like you might have in other states where you could go in and light up. The bill sponsors also want to see more women and minority-owned businesses to have a better shot of obtaining licenses for dispensaries to help underserved, underrepresented populations. So there's a lot going on. Also, the bill would provide for expunging old criminal records for people who were convicted of misdemeanor pot possession. So there's quite a bit in this, and as I say, they've been kind of taking this on the road. Springfield was one of the locations for a town hall on that. They had one up in the Chicago area earlier. It's estimated that presently we have something like 800,000 Illinoisans currently buying and using marijuana, and depending on how you end up taxing it, it could raise somewhere between $350 to $750 million a year. Some say even up to $1 billion a year. Now, that's not something that you're going to turn around and necessarily use on plugging holes in the state budget. The bill sponsors have said, as of this point, they still want to see this a lot of this money used on drug prevention programs and education. Still got some opposition. The chiefs of police are against it. There's a new story out today that the 6 Illinois Catholic bishops in the state are opposed to this. So not exactly a done deal, but I think the conventional wisdom is there will be a bill passed by the end of this semester. Semester. Boy, have I worked at the university for 35 years or what?
Yeah. Legalize marijuana to fund drug prevention and enforcement and all that.
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly. They think that makes it an easier sell, although the state's revenue issues, as we were just talking about at the top of the interview, are critical at this point. That would go a long way to filling some of the holes in the budget. You know, there's some others out there that have been talked about. Illinois will probably be moving on some form of sports betting this session. They don't want the state to be behind on that because other states are already doing that. That's another one that could rake in hundreds of millions of dollars a year, maybe as high as $1 billion, given the size of the state of Illinois. There's some gaming expansion for those 6 licenses that are still out there. So there's a lot of discussion. The problem is, some of this might go towards a capital bill. Governor Pritzker definitely wants one of those. The House and Senate Republicans and Democrats want a capital bill. The problem is, again, with all of these, the backlog of bills being at, $7.5 billion, pension payments need to go up as well. We've got $130 billion in back pension obligations. We've got to fund somehow. The state Supreme Court said you really don't have any choice but to pay that. It just comes down to how and when you do it. You're going to have to endure that.
All right. Good to visit with you, Jack. Thanks so much. I'm sure we'll talk to you soon.
Oh, it's always a pleasure to be with you and your listeners, DeLoss. Great to be with you.
You too, as always. Jack Tichenor is down at Southern Illinois University. He's down in Carbondale and is also the host of Illinois Lawmakers. Dale Dirkholz will be in studio next on RFD today. Let's check livestock markets on the RFD Radio Network. I'm DeLoss Yankee. Illinois direct hog market late last week was steady to $1 higher from $28 to $37 a hundredweight. Sow market was steady to $5 higher, $18 to $27 for lightweights, $22 to $35 for heavyweights. Heavy boars with a top of 8. Fairview Sale Barn Thursday had a special feeder sale that was originally for the 17th, but inclement weather back then extended their feeder sale calendar. 169 six-weight steers average 144 with a top of 155. 138 seven-weight steers average 136 with a top of 149.5. 113 five-weight heifers average 129 with a top price of 147.5. 158 six-weight heifers average 126, top of 138. DeLoss Yankee, RFD Radio Network.
How do people benefit from raising livestock here in Illinois?
Rich Giebert, Illinois farmer, president of the Illinois Farm Bureau.
Well, growing up on a livestock farm was always interesting, and I enjoy it more today than I did back then. But it did give me the opportunity to have a good work ethic, learn to get up in the morning. And you know, that was difficult during my senior days at high school and college days. I had a tendency not to go to bed at a respectable hour. But no, it was always enjoyable on the farm and getting up before daybreak and milking the cows and getting the chores done and then go about the rest of the day's business.
Illinois Farm Bureau, along with beef, corn, milk, pork, and soybean associations, make up the Livestock Development Group, supporting the Illinois livestock sector. For more information, check out illinoislivestock.org.
All right, welcome back to RFD Today on a Monday. I'm DeLoss Yankee. Agrivisors, Senior Analyst Dale Dirkholz in a chipper mood. He took a lot of corn money and put it on the under in last night's Super Bowl and came out big.
Hey, I didn't watch the game.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I really had no interest. But from what I gather, it was all downhill after Gladys sang the national anthem.
It certainly was.
I watched a video of that this morning. She
crushed it.
She did a really nice job with that. Yeah, she didn't try. Too many people try to oversing that song,
right.
and you don't. You know, you just sing it.
It's a tough song because you have to climb the ladder a little bit, but
Yeah.
you started at just the right spot. She just nailed it. It was tremendous.
I've heard a lot of people comment it's a really tough song to sing, but she did. She nailed it, did a really nice job. But again, as I say, she didn't try to oversing it. She just sang it and sang it with lots of heart.
Yeah, she certainly did. Yeah, very good. Okay, now you're about to go on the barnstorming tour. What's that all about?
Yeah, it's my annual sabbatical to Southern Illinois.
It's a good way to look at it. A lot of people don't give presentations on their sabbaticals.
Yeah. I spend all week, start out tonight, clear down around Mounds, Illinois, and I spend all week doing presentations across far Southern Illinois. And I mean far Southern Illinois. I don't get much. I think the furthest north I get of Mount Vernon, I do one at Olney.
Doing it Olney?
Yeah.
Tell Shippy hi and see if you can find a white squirrel while you're down there.
Yeah, well, I don't remember what time of day it is, but if it's an evening meeting, go in under the cover of darkness and leave, and you don't see them.
No, you don't see very much at all. All right. Now, I was out most of last week down in New Orleans for Cattle Industry Convention. And yeah, I sure did. But the numbers this week look kind of similar to around the time I left last week.
What do you mean, the prices?
Yeah.
Yeah. And by the time we get to next Monday after I get back, it'll probably look the same again.
Mm-hmm.
You know, one of the issues we're going to have this week in the game is it's Chinese Lunar New Year.
I was going to ask you.
And that started, yesterday or today. Oh, by the way, it's the year of the pig.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a good thing. But, so we won't be getting much news out of China at all. Things tend to get kind of quiet over there because the whole country mostly goes on vacation, it seems, although there is some little stuff. We just wrapped up meetings in Washington last week. Those meetings with the Chinese ended on what seemed like an upbeat note, and you don't know a lot of the details, a lot of the background that goes on that you don't see or hear about. But typically, when you have something like that, it seems, if you're getting an upbeat assessment, some of the stuff going on in the background must be reasonably good, reasonably positive, with some potential in the outcome for them. So I'm kind of wondering if they really didn't finally make some progress on what really is the bigger issues, the intellectual property theft and also the economic barriers to doing business in China. And if that's the case, we've got some groundwork maybe where we can get something really wrapped up, and they seem to be upbeat about that possibility.
Yeah, let's move some product in if we have the opportunity to. Meanwhile, December corn just sits there just slightly a little more than $4 on the futures market. So, it hasn't move one way or the other very much in weeks.
No, and it won't. You know, when you look back at a history of December corn here, even a modern history in this era of quote-unquote lower prices, you really understand that, you know, we've had a pretty consistent pattern being able to sell December corn at $4.25 or something real close to it, if not a little bit higher. So I don't see any anxiousness or any reason to be really concerned or worried about it at this point. A few people out there might be at this juncture, but I'd rather take a background. Even in beans, when you look back at this modern era, you know, of low prices after we went through those high ones, we've seen November beans been able to climb to around, you know, right around, if not a little bit over $10, and they're trading around $9.50.
Friday is crop production.
Yeah, this
the January 14th. We're going to be
January,
this Friday,
January 11th.
Yeah.
Yeah, this Friday, the USDA finally gives us the dump on the crop production reports. You know, as I've said before, I don't think people have really missed the production numbers so much as we didn't get the grain stocks number, which is kind of a check on what demand really might be. We've missed some of that. We didn't get the winter wheat plantings number, which I think was a miss. The S&Ds, kind of mediocre, I would say. But I think more than anything, and we're still going to be in a backlog, is getting caught up on some of these export sales numbers along the way in here. And, you know, we're getting them week by week for the next couple of weeks yet, and then we're going to get 1 week out there where we're going to get a dump of 6 weeks of data in one shot.
Wow, that's a data dump.
Yeah.
That's a lot to come through.
So I think it's the demand variables that people are most, you know, uncertain, unsettled, anxious, whatever kind of adjective you want to put on it about.
Who's in charge of the fats and oils report?
That comes out of NAS.
Is that like the first job you get at NAS and then you work your way above that? Is that an entry-level kind of report? Fats and oils doesn't seem very glamorous.
Either that or grain crushings. And they're two really big reports. See, the fats and oils, there were quite a few years we didn't get it. That used to be done by the census, and the census quit it, and NAS picked it up. It really is a big report, that and the grain crushing.
Gotcha. Dale Durkle's safe travels at a Southern Illinois barnstorming tour this week. I'm DeLoss Yankee saying watch your ends. We'll be back in studio tomorrow.
More farm news and information ahead. Stay tuned for more RFD Today here on the Illinois Farm Bureau Radio Network.
I used to say I was an Illinois Farm Bureau member because it gives us farmers a voice in Washington. Then there was a bad regulation proposed in my community. That's when I learned what my county Farm Bureau does for me right here in my own backyard. From giving scholarships to local kids to tackling township or zoning concerns, Farm Bureau starts right here. And now, that's why I say I'm a member.
Call your county farm